welcome to the Overlanding podcast, the original podcast about vehicle travel. I'm your host, Lucy Snaith. Throughout the series, I've been chatting with adventurous people who have chosen to travel the world by bicycle, car and track. The aim of the podcast is to discover what makes people to embark on life-changing journeys, to hear some incredible stories along the way. I've got the hand. Episode 30 is no different as we speak to the Snaith family about their incredible 4-year journey throughout 58 countries. My mum and dad took us with them, proving that kids are notes not to take extended overland trip.
Hi, Steve and Gilly, and today Emma is with me around the virtual campfire. Hi guys.
Hi. Hello.
Steve and Gilly are also known as the Overlanding family on the internet. Can you tell me a little bit about what you've been doing in the last 4 years?
Well, in July 2013 we set off from the UK and in our truck and shipped to Canada, and then drove all the way through North America, wiggled our way through South America, then did a big figure of 8 loop around South America, then shipped to Africa, did a loop of Southern Africa for 5-6 months, then went to Australia, did a loop of Australia, and then this last year we've been driving back through Asia. We started in Singapore and went all the way through, and arrived back in the UK 2 months ago.
How are you finding being back?
Starting to struggle. The first month is all excitement, meeting everybody, and lots of things to sort out. But now it's sort of starting to be, that's finishing, now what? So it's. I think the next few months are going to be the hardest.
Yeah, I think adjusting to being back home is harder than adjusting to being on the road.
Oh, absolutely, because it's so exciting to be on the road. And I know there's challenges, but it's the coming back. And we have this sort of joke that ideally that we would stay here till Christmas, and you know, when you get starting depressed in January, that we just head off on the road again. But unfortunately that's not going to happen.
So just to step back there, you're known as the Overlanding family. So there is an additional 2 people in your team who aren't with us at the moment, but we'll be speaking to them later. So you took your kids adventuring with you as well. How old were they when you left?
So we have 2 daughters. Alicia was just about to be 8 when we left, and Lucy was 4.5. So we took them out of school and off we went. They were always part of the plan that they would come with us. They've known since birth that was what was going to happen. So they were very happy to sort of start the trip and start normal life. And Lucy travelled for half her life already. I mean, it's been how they've grown up.
So how did your friends and family feel about the prospect of taking the kids adventuring like that for such a long duration?
Well, we met 18 years before we left and had planned this trip for 18 years. So it was a long time, and everyone always kept on saying, oh, yeah, you'll do it. As in, you will never do that. And so when the kids came along, they were definitely like, yeah, you're definitely not going to do it. So they always knew, all our friends and family knew that it was a possibility that we'd do it. So I think they were quite surprised when we actually did sort of say, that's it, we're going to go. And as for taking the kids, my side of the family were all very positive, and I travelled as a child, and my parents travelled as well. I think your parents were less keen.
They were fine, me and Gilly going. They were a bit more concerned about taking the kids. I think they were a bit worried about that.
But we were expats overseas already, and the children had never lived in the UK, but we had very international minded friends. So I think it was overwhelmingly positive.
I think that open attitude that comes from being an expat gives you a much more kind of open mindset anyway, and because you're used to living in other people's countries and being in other people's countries, so I think automatically that kind of fear of the unknown is lost to some degree, which I think potentially puts, if you spent your whole life living in England and then you're going to embark on one of these kind of long overland journeys, there's so many areas that could be daunting or alien to you. And I think if you're an expat, you've kind of got that mindset and you've got over that already. So I think that probably really helped.
And the expat community is very supportive. I mean, even the school that the children were at was a British school in Prague. They were all very excited about the trip. This is the teachers, and we even got asked to take the truck into the school playground for Alicia to show it off. What they have, what called show and tell.
Yeah.
And her show and tell was a 10-ton truck. And the school has still kept in touch. A few posts on Facebook, and in fact they've even said it would be great if you could come back because we'd love the children to share their adventures with their former classmates.
Yeah.
And so I think that shows a much more broader minded outlook, and it was great to have that support because they knew we were doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, remember Alicia had a new teacher once, and we went to our parents' evening, and the teacher said Alicia was doing really well, but she's got this strange thing. She keeps telling us that she's going to drive around the world in a truck. And we went, yes, she is. She's like, oh. She thought it was just some
overactive imagination that
yeah.
she had. Yeah, so it really helped that the school was so positive. And all the teachers saying, "Oh, can I come with you?" And so when they left on this huge high. What they were doing was going to be amazing, and everyone wanted to do what they were doing.
And we even met one of the teachers, or one of the teaching support staff, in Brazil. She's Brazilian, married to a French guy, had returned back to Brazil, got in touch with us when we were in Brazil, and invited us to the family home. And we had a wonderful afternoon with all her extended family. Recounting about our trip and memories of Prague and what have you. So amazing, connections like that.
That openness and approach to education is really important. I think it's something that we lack within UK culture. This attitude of kids being fined for not going to school, or to say that there was one recently, a couple of months ago. It's probably just before you came back that. There was a family who had taken their kids on a yacht around the world, and they had a lot of public criticism saying, "Oh, you can't do that with your kids. It's not right taking them out of school." And I think people don't understand the benefits of having these experiences with your kids. I spoke with Kirsty from Letter from the Lemurs on one of the podcasts, and she was talking about the benefits and of taking your kids travelling in this way, and I agree with her wholeheartedly. I think it's the most incredible thing you can possibly do with your kids, and at no point is it any detriment to their education in any way, shape or form. If anything, it enhances it more so than going through a standard educational kind of model in the UK. I think it's an incredible thing to do. Did you have any woes or concerns before going that other people's opinions, of how other people would see you as parents taking your kids on this trip?
I think not really, partly because I think being expats,
yeah,
and so people are different anyway and doing different things, and as you say, their children aren't having a fully standard education. They might be in schools, but they're in foreign schools, they get moved around quite a lot. So we weren't worried about it from the expat community, and to be honest, because we've been expats so long, we weren't really worried about the British community, should we say.
Yeah.
And we had confidence in ourselves that we knew our kids. We knew that because we were going for 4 years, the schooling had to be a priority. I think if you go for 1 year, you can be quite relaxed about the schooling and almost unschool them, just saying, look at the world, it's amazing, and they'll learn so much. Here's some books, and they'll learn so much anyway. But for us, it was very important to have the schooling really quite well, sort of thought out. And we were just like, we know they're going to do better. And it's amazing returning home. I mean, Lucy's still homeschooled, but Alicia's gone to a very academic school, which she had to pass an exam to get into. And we were sort of like, oh gosh, how will she cope? Well, she's thriving in everything. And they don't really know. We were there last night, and it was only French that she's got an issue with, because neither of us speak very good French, and we couldn't really pass that on. But they're like, wouldn't have known she was homeschooled, wouldn't known that she's, because she's above and beyond where she, should be. So it's not.
I mean, I think academically we didn't really worry about it. Some subjects she really shines in, partly because she has a big interest in them, like history, and others you think like geography. Obviously, she's doing well because of what she's done. I think we were never really worried about would she miss out academically if, as it happened, if Gilly was going to put the work in to teach them. Gilly was the teacher on the trip. then they weren't going to miss out academically. I suppose our concerns slightly were more, would they miss out more on a social side of things? Again, not, when you speak to them, they're quite social children, and they'll talk to people, both adults and children. They're much more confident talking to adults than your average children. But it's that building your long-term school friends. And of course, they've met lots of people, friends and children along the way, and they've kept in touch with some, but you only meet them for a short period of time. So I think that was more our concern, which is why Alicia's gone back into school. As a pre-teen, she hopefully will make some long friends, and is already establishing friendships, and it doesn't seem to have been a problem. But I think if we travelled endlessly, that was our only slight concern.
That situation isn't unusual, because if you were to look at a standard family in the UK who had kids, quite often people are relocating for work, and so kids are moving from one end of the country to the other all the time, and they adapt and can deal with it. So I don't think there's really any concerns there. One of the reasons I'm asking some of these questions are I'm aware that we might have listeners who potentially might want to do a trip like this and are kind of not using their kids as an excuse not to do it, but have concerns and worries about potentially doing a trip like this with kids, and some of the kind of potential outcomes of what might happen if they were to undertake a trip like that with their kids.
On that subject, just out of interest, if there were people listening in that situation, I'm in an R-ing, if you could offer them like a couple of like really useful bits of advice on travelling long term with children, what would that be?
Just go, because you will regret not going, and that's it, and it's no excuse. I mean, for us, we wanted to wait till they were out of nappies and able to walk. And we're big hikers, and that was important.
Right.
And toddlers don't necessarily understand the word no, and when we left, Lucy was 4.5. She may not respond to the word no,
but she understood it.
She understood it. So if there was a big dog coming or something, or cars and things like that. So I think sort of picking a right sort of time. But on the other hand, we have met people who've travelled with toddlers, and it just meant that they always had to have an eye out.
And I think with toddlers, you're carrying a lot more things, like nappies. Do you need a pushchair? Do you need a special backpack that you're carrying on? So it's easier. But as Gilly said, it doesn't mean you can't do it. And again, even at the other end of the spectrum, I suppose one of the reasons we picked our time to go is Lucy was out of nappies and could walk and understand things. And Alicia was still in primary school, and we were planning, it did change, but we were planning that we would come back for her to enter secondary school. So we thought that was a perfect moment. But I'm very alive that when you tell people this is what you need to do, as we know, overlanders, like everyone, there's all these different opinions out there.
Of course,
and so really, if you know your own family, just do it when it works. I mean, I think you can. I mean, maybe it's not the best thing to pull them out 6 months before their exams and say we're disappearing for a year. But I think there's lots of times you could take them out, and certainly we met lots of people travelling with children, particularly French people.
Yeah, we have. The French seem to be,
and they're really supportive. I mean, most of it's for a year, and I think, as Gilly said, for a year it's very, very doable. Again, assuming it's not sort of exam year. A year wouldn't have been enough for us. We were greedy. We couldn't see what we wanted to see in a year.
I don't know if that's greedy.
It is, but if
and we planned and saved for those 18 years, so we were like, okay, now it was such a long time for us to leave. We just thought, okay, now we're going to do it. We're going to do it properly.
I read that on your website somewhere that you've been planning for 18 years, and I was like, what, really?
It's quite depressing, isn't it?
Well, it's not so much.
I don't think we had 18 months to plan our trip.
It's not so much planning, is it? It's more a case of you want to do it and just waiting for the right time.
Yeah, I am a consummate planner, so I just plan. But the only thing is, I need to have a plan, but I constantly change the plan because circumstances. So our plan originally was very different to what we actually did, and even 6 months before we left, we radically changed our plan because we flipped the way we went around the world completely. We were going to go east, and we ended up going west. If you say planning, it's part of the fun. Some of it is planning.
I'm a big planner. Luckily for you, but you have to have that flexibility when you're travelling that way. You have to. Yeah.
Like you said, it's part of the fun, and actually prior to leaving, I really, really enjoyed the planning stage, especially working on the vehicle and kind of planning the vehicle and exactly what I wanted out of that vehicle. So you're obviously a family of 4 travelling, and let's talk about the vehicle just very briefly. It's a big old truck. Did you toy around with the idea of going in anything smaller, or how did you reach that conclusion that you wanted to go in the vehicle that you chose?
I think when we first started planning this, sort of 18 years before we went, it was always going to be just a Land Rover with a rooftop tent, but obviously it was just Gilly and I then, and it was probably going to be a 9-month, 12-month trip. As I was working and things developed and the children came along and we were going to plan a longer trip, we sort of looked at what sort of vehicle would we need, and we looked at all sorts of vehicles. We went to the Bad Kissimmee, Schwabenter and Alrad, and of course that has the full range from Land Rovers up to trucks even bigger than ours, much bigger than ours. And I think there was a few things that determined it for us. One was we knew at the time we were going to go for 3 years, so we knew we were going to be away for a considerable amount of time. We didn't want to be ever really utilising hostels or hotels if we could avoid it. And we wanted a vehicle that would be able to manage different weather conditions.
Yeah.
And I think we also, with the children, it became important. We wanted them to have a sense of home and somewhere they could do their schooling without sort of sitting in the middle of an Indian bazaar trying to do schooling.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, so they can sort of cosset themselves in the vehicle and sit down and focus for a couple of hours. And so we did look at, so I think we always felt it was going to be sort of, should we say, a live-in vehicle. We did look at things like Mercedes Sprint size vehicle, because the one thing with our vehicle is I needed to pass my HGV licence, which was something I really wanted to avoid if I could. But I think we felt it would just have been too tight putting 4 people into that. Fantastic for 2 people, but for 4 people it would have just been a bit tight. Especially, we also wanted the children to sit in the cab with us, not to be sort of rolling around in bed in the back when we're driving. And so we sort of got, as you do when you look around these vehicles, and sort of got all excited about getting a truck. Eventually sort of passed my driving licence, and then I remember the first time we saw the truck we were like, oh gosh, it's big. When it was being built, it's like, wow, it's big. But
I mean, anyone could do it in any sort of vehicles, as you know. Overlanders will go in anything, from a Nissan Micra up to like a big truck like ours. But for us, that was kind of our, just because we went for one side. I mean, we sort of say on our next trip, which maybe without the children, we'll go for something smaller.
Yeah. There are pros and cons to whichever vehicle you choose. There's no such thing as the perfect vehicle, and it's
despite what people will tell you.
Despite
their vehicle is the perfect vehicle, and you're all an idiot.
We've definitely, there are aspects of the way we travel that we would love to change, and that would come with a different vehicle. But then, what you gain in one area, you lose in another. So
as we're driving through tiny Central American villages or Indian towns, we would love to be in a much smaller vehicle. And then at the other end of the scale, when we're sat in a beautiful desolate spot in Patagonia with the wind whistling, we've been hiking all day, we're soaked to the skin, and there's a gale blowing, we love just climbing in, closing the door, putting the kettle on, the kids sit and watch a video if they want, we can have a shower, and we're still out in the wilderness, and it's amazing, so there is swings and roundabouts.
And one thing I love about our truck is that once we filled it up with fuel and water and food, we can go for 10 days. And so we can really get away from it. And that's what, especially Patagonia and the stands and various...
Outback Australia.
Outback Australia. It was just so wonderful because, we could go for 2,000 kilometres on our fuel. So we could really go a long way without sort of stressing, all the problems in Uzbekistan people have through fuel dumps, because there's no diesel. We were like, I think we can do it, no problem, so that's what we love as well, because it really gives us that independence.
And we still get, people look at it and say, oh, you can't get off the road with that. We get down mountain tracks and lots of things. We do, the biggest thing we struggle with is trees because of the height. And occasionally turning circle because it's got a long wheelbase, but we did the game parks of Africa in it. We did getting off of the beaten track in South America, down dirt tracks and down dirt mountainside roads and across mountain passes. I wouldn't say we could do the extreme 4x4 tracks, but then a lot of people don't do them anyway, because it's one thing doing them if it's your weekend buzz.
Yeah.
It's another
it's
thing
your
when it's your home.
Yeah,
You're like,
equipment.
yeah, exactly. So you don't want to break everything. So we, we can do a big piece of that. I mean, there's a few 4x4 tracks in the parks in Africa.
We've got some nice scratches down the side
Yeah,
of the truck.
and we couldn't get down, and some of them, whether we should have been going down, I don't know. But and even in like game viewing, you think in a big truck the animals all run away. They didn't, and the beauty of it is, again, we could go out at the crack of dawn, and because we could do schooling in the truck, we could eat our lunch in the truck, we could go to the toilet in the truck. We didn't have to return to the official campsites again until dusk. We could spend the afternoon by a waterhole because we had all our facilities sort of on board with us, and that meant we could spend more time actually out with the animals in a way. Yeah.
It was really lovely because the kids and I would be in the back doing school by the waterhole, and Steve was like, "Come, quick! There's something at the waterhole." So we'd rush to the front and with the binoculars to look at it, and then right, time for maths, and the kids are like, "No, there's something else going on." It's really quite hard to keep them focused at that point, but it really was a really nice opportunity.
How did that role work out? Because you were a teacher prior to...
Yeah, I'm a secondary biology teacher.
Yeah.
So obviously teaching primary is quite different.
Yeah.
The school that they were at, as I said, they were really supportive, so they gave me lots of ideas. In some ways, I think homeschooling, being a teacher, is a disadvantage because you are pre-trained to teach in a certain way and to expect a certain sort of response, etc., which I think in some ways everyone says, "Oh, you're a teacher, of course you could teach your own children." But now sort of getting into the homeschooling community, I think if I didn't have that sort of idea beforehand of how it would be, I would have actually found it easier.
Yeah.
As it was, I mean, it was great. I mean, how can you not get excited about going to a new country, new culture, and teaching your kids about the religion, about the environment, about the ecosystems, about everything. It really just was very natural because you'd be like, "Oh, we're off to Africa, so what can we do in Africa? Okay, apartheid, okay, the animals, okay, we can some of the geology, we can go to Great Zimbabwe, look at the history," and someone's like, "We don't have time to travel, to study all the things."
Yeah.
And that's how we did their schooling was basically based on where we were.
Yeah.
We have a great Lonely Travel Not for Parents book, which has a different country in it on every page, and each country would open it up and look and read about it, and often the kids would say, "Oh, I want to know more about whatever it was, weird spider-eating habits of Laos or something like that." So then we'd find out more and more and more about that.
Yeah.
And so that's how they did most of their education, apart from the English and the maths, which we kept up with in line with the UK,
Right,
because we knew
okay.
we wanted them to return to school at some point.
Yeah.
Or to have that option. And then sometimes they say, like I remember in Brazil, do you remember it was 42 degrees and it was so hot and humid, and they're like, "We want to do Victorian London."
That's what Alicia, she'd been watching Downton Abbey,
Right.
and so she wanted to study Victorian English.
Which is not Victorian England, but anyway, but that sort of linked on to her ideas of what it was. So it's 42 degrees, we're dripping in sweat, and obviously they really took on this whole idea, and they're dressing up in like 6 of my skirts and got your keys pretending to be housekeepers and talking to each other. Yeah, so they just
In
got
the
really-
rainforest.
Yes, in the rainforest. It was just they're so excited. And I mean, on the first part of the trip, we went up to the Mayan and Aztec ruins in Mexico, which I'd learnt all about, and that's where we saw the sort of beauty of this learning as you go.
Yeah.
Because we told them all about the history, and they'd read loads of books and watched little bits and found out more information. And there they were on the top of this pyramid, pretending to sacrifice each other, and one of them was a servant, and one of them was, and they're drinking blood with the hot chocolate, and, and it was sort of like, wow, they really are learning.
Yeah. What an amazing education.
Exactly.
And to take advantage of the opportunities that each country presents itself.
Yeah.
And to follow what they're interested in. I think that's how education should be anyway.
And it's more holistic when you're studying these topics, because rather than having, the next 30 minutes you're going to do history, and then the next 30 minutes I thought you're going to do geography, totally unconnected, and then the next 30 minutes you're going to do science, totally unconnected to the last two topics. apart from the English and the maths, you pick a topic really like the country or the Mayans, and then it brings in all of those things, because you do the geography, the history, the science, you can do climate, and so when Gilly would pick a topic, it would embrace pretty much the whole spectrum of the education, and they just get excited about the topic, and they don't say, oh, this is history now, or this is, they just learn.
And their enthusiasm leads you into the next and
very peculiar avenues sometimes. You're like, okay, we're studying this, but now we've gone off topic, but it's still learning.
And surely a better way to educate children, because you follow by their enthusiasms, they stay interested, and
then they learn from people. I mean, they learn painting from Aboriginals in Australia doing the dot painting, from the people who do it. They learned to make batiks in Malaysia from a batik maker. They made iPad cases, the traditional way of sewing with a Nepalese ladies' community. So talk about modern and old. Yes, but so other great ways of learning like that.
The beauty of that is also the fact that you're learning, so you're enthusiastic about the subjects too, whereas you can imagine someone in a traditional schooling system who's teaching the same history over and over, year after year. How can a kid be enthusiastic about that if the person teaching it isn't even enthusiastic about that anymore? So that kind of on the fly kind of travel and spontaneity to it, I think only helps kids and reinforces kids to learn and soak up their environment. I think it's
some of the things they had to learn a little earlier in life than you might have planned. I mean, Lucy did have "What Are Those Lions Doing" on the middle of the track as we were watching two mating lions as she's about 6 years of age. But
it's not a bad way to learn.
Exactly. Well, it was hilarious because they wouldn't get off the road, so we were like, okay, and it was a really quiet track, so they're doing it in the middle of the road, and then so we watched them for a little while, and very quick.
Yeah, it's only a few seconds.
Well, then they lie down, and they just lay down, literally shagged out on the middle of the road. And so we're like, we can't move them. This is awful, and we can't get off the track. So we're like, oh, it's nearly lunch. Should we go make some sandwiches in the back? And then they started again as we're eating the sandwiches, all looking out the window, eating sandwiches. Oh, they're going out for you. Yeah, so they do learn some things. It was also very good for us because sometimes as adults when you travel you read the Lonely Planet about the history of something or whatever, but because we had them aboard we had to learn stuff on in more detail, a more interesting detail. And the other thing to do is what I kept on doing is using Kindle, download books and say, well, I don't know anything about, convict history in Australia, but I found a great load of kids' books that were, novels, historical novels. You read it and then you tell me about it. So then they go off and say, did you know? And I'll be like, no, I had no idea. But, for them to teach us sometimes. Or they'd go off to some, to a museum and they'd look at things and things like that, and then they'd come back and tell us how that worked. So they often taught us things. So really
I think seeing the world through the eyes of a child, children have such inquisitive minds, and because they don't have that context or reference points that maybe you have, you get it given from a whole new perspective. I should imagine that was probably quite enlightening for you to kind of spend that time with your kids, which is also, if your children go through a traditional schooling route, that you don't spend that time with your kids because your kid is at school for most of the day and you're at work. So I think you're incredibly lucky to have that time with your children. It's a good way just to kind of...
I particularly appreciate that because before, when I was working, we were based in Prague, but my job took me all over Central and Eastern Europe, and basically every Monday morning I went to the airport, got on a plane and came back on a Friday night and collapsed and spent the weekend recovering, and so I didn't see the children that much. And so having had the last 4 years with them, I really appreciate the benefit of that and seeing them really, if I had continued in that job, I wouldn't have really seen them grow up. I mean, I would have seen them in weekly instalments growing, but you could really live it through them, and you've got this really shared experience and memories and things that hopefully will stay with them for the rest of their lives, and and it was really good to do it with them like that.
Were there ever times if you, and I guess this is a general homeschooling question, not so much related to overland travel, but were there times when it was difficult to play that teacher role, whereas, you know, is there a blurred line from the kids' perspective where it's like, oh, well, actually, no, I want to do this, and they're a bit disobedient because
of course.
you're their mother rather than their teacher?
Yes, of course, there is always that, but I think you have that as a parent anyway, and as homeschooling, we got over it. I mean, it was difficult because we're always going to say the same table is breakfast table, then it turned into a school table, then it turned into Lego table, and then it turned into something, you know, it was always the same spot. But they got used to it, didn't they? And we got used to it.
But the beauty of that is, though, like you were saying, you're constantly learning because you're in that environment. You're learning from whatever's around you, and so it's the downtime which is equally as important as the time when you're being taught or being a student. I guess, you know, it's all encompassing, isn't it? You're learning wherever you go in whatever you do.
Exactly. I mean, we found what worked best for us was this 2 hours of formal sitting down every day, 7 days a week, and that was ample enough time to cover all the curriculum that they had to do, the English and the maths, and to do sort of more formal sitting down work. But then we'd out living life, you know, the overland life. We were driving, we were visiting things, we were going to museums, we were, you know, and talking all the time.
Yeah.
So they learnt so much from that. And that's far, you know, now they go, you know, Alicia's at school, she goes to school for a set amount of time, and yes, I'm sure there is learning outside that, but it's quite that,
less fun,
the overlanding life gives you so much.
I used to try and do it first thing on the morning, so like 8 till 10, because then it left the rest of the day for either driving or enjoying wherever you were, hiking or what have you. And that we found after a while that for our children and for you, that, and for me as well, that worked sort of best. I mean, often it would mean if they were doing that, I would be doing other chores like washing or what have you while Julie was teaching them. But that worked quite well too, and it, you know, meant you still had a pretty long day ahead of you. I mean, we're not with the children. You're not out partying till midnight and everything quite so much. So you know, we could get up and get on with the schooling.
Well, we weren't partying till midnight.
No, I don't think many overlanders do.
No, in bed by about 4:30 sometimes in the middle of winter.
Yeah, if it's cold and dark, I like to be in bed.
Yeah.
With obviously the kids in tow, how much did the kids influence your route? Were there any particular countries you didn't go to? Or
That's our one regret. I mean, we travelled throughout the world, and no problem with the children. We just didn't go to Venezuela in South America.
Yeah, I think that was the first country we missed. It was probably not as bad as it is now, Venezuela, but I wanted to go there mainly because I wanted to get to Manaus. You might say Manaus, wonderful jungle, the Amazon. I wanted to get to Manaus because it was England-Italy first World Cup game, and it would have fitted perfectly the timing.
Right.
So yes, we would have obviously done the Amazon and that as well, but we could hoping to combine
as a lower priority.
Yeah, we could
the
combine,
Amazon. On the way.
combine the two. But I think I had a cousin who lived in Venezuela, and we exchanged some correspondence, and were really told it wouldn't be a good idea to come.
But I think it wouldn't have been a good idea for us to go either. But the one thing I regret is that when we got to Nepal, we were a bit trapped because at that point the route to Tibet, which is where we really wanted to go after Nepal, was closed because of after the earthquake. Myanmar, we had hoped to go through to China that way, through Myanmar, and not the Rohingya problem issues on that state, but actually in the north they also had problems, and they closed off that border, and then the only other way out was through Pakistan and on the Karakoram Highway, and we were trying to do it in April, which would be really at the start of the season, so we didn't have any recent sort of reports on the security situation. We only had reports from sort of October, and we were umming and ahhing, and that's when, you know, talk about families' responses. When we said, I think we're going to go through Pakistan, then we got lots of, from people we know who are very experienced travellers, and we sort of went, maybe that's not the best idea. And then also the added problem was the only place we could get a Pakistani visa was London.
Yes.
And when we talked to them, they were like, somewhere between 3 and 10 weeks for your visa. And we were like, we can't, you know, we knew that the end point of our trip was about 6 months beyond that.
Plus we had the Chinese booking, so you...
So we were really struggling with that. So at that point we decided not to take the children to Pakistan. that we stayed in Nepal while Steve went back to London to get his visa, and actually got it within 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So that worked really, really well. And while Steve drove through Pakistan, not that he's
I was the one that could be sacrificed, you know.
oh, not that you're indispensable.
Yeah.
Indispensable.
Well, but this, it was a choice of shipping out of India the truck and now almost having to get the truck all the way back to Turkey or even Europe, and it would kill that end bit of the journey.
Yeah.
And so I said, sort of, no, we're not doing that. I'll drive through Pakistan. I'll take the risk. But it sort of did feel easier with not having the children with us. But looking back on it,
You had a wonderful
I had
time.
a fantastic 2 weeks in
and it was
Pakistan.
very safe.
You
Yeah.
just don't know, do you?
Yeah.
You have to weigh these things up.
Yeah, so I mean, in retrospect, having done what I did, I wish everyone had come with us, and I didn't think it was any more risky than other places.
Yeah.
Clearly things can go wrong, but they can go wrong pretty much anywhere these days. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Mm. And talking of things going wrong, did you have any issues with the vehicle? What kind of problems did you encounter?
With the vehicle, I mean, we had a few issues. Nothing really major. I mean, we had the usual punctures. The classic joke on mine is I have front covers on the front disc brakes. They broke every 10,000 kilometres. The company man now accepts it's a design fault, so I get new ones for free now.
Brilliant.
So, in fact, I've had a recall on them. I don't know whether it's due to my vehicle, but presumably they're breaking on other people's vehicles. But nothing that really stranded us. So we had it serviced as we went around the world, and bits and pieces as the service said they needed replacing. A few oil leaks, but nothing like that. The closest we became to being stranded was we were in Alice Springs, and we'd gone into a caravan park to do washing and stuff, and we're just staying there 2 nights. And when we went to leave, our battery exploded. And so it completely exploded, literally, a massive bang, and it exploded. And of course, then the battery wouldn't work. And although we could have maybe got the leisure batteries to and we ordered a new battery, which in Alice Springs still took like 4 or 5 days to come from Adelaide. But we'd spent the last 10 days out in the McDonnell Ranges in these really remote valleys, and we'd been wild camping as you do and having a great time. It seems fantastic. And we just thought, well, if that had happened 500 kilometres from Alice Springs, 6 k's down a track from the road.
And the road was only a dirt road, which no one passed anyway.
But if people pass every few hours, it wouldn't have been, and we have enough stuff in the truck. But that would have been painful. Plus, being towed back into Alice Springs would have cost an absolute fortune. So other than that, no, the truck, and that was a relief because I'm completely not mechanical. I had no mechanical knowledge leaving. I now have a minute amount of mechanical knowledge.
Right.
And so we very much weighed up, do you get a new vehicle or an old vehicle? A lot of people say, you've got to get an old vehicle, no electronics, you don't have to worry about the ultra low sulfur diesel. But the downside is old vehicles tend to break more often. They're often easier to fix if they break, but my thing is, it doesn't matter how easy to fix it is, I can't fix it. The benefit of the new vehicle was it's less likely to break down, and we were fortunate in that situation that it didn't break down, and we managed things like all the thing about the ultra low sulfur diesel. We had no problem with that.
Even in Bolivia, when it was not only high sulfur but dirty diesel and things like that, it worked really well.
And the scale of the vehicle, you mentioned like punches. Obviously changing a wheel on a 4x4 is quite hefty work anyway. But on that truck, I should imagine those wheels probably weigh
120 kilos.
Yeah,
they're hard. Gilly and I can change a wheel between us, and we've had to do it a number of times. What we have a problem is where our wheels are stored. It's a strange design system, and it's on sort of a pivot, so they pivot out. And the problem is when it passes that pivot, you've got to lower the wheel down. We can just manage that between us to drop it and then drop it a bit and do it. The problem comes is when you've got to push it back over the pivot, because one person's got to put the bolt in. So there's only one of you pushing it up, and I can't physically do it. What's happened, of course, when you have a puncture is there's always people wanting to help you. Everywhere. In fact, in some countries they want to help you so much that they actually refuse to let you get involved, and they want to do all of it for you. So everywhere, often people stop and say, "Can we help you?" And if we're just starting the chainsaw, we say, "No, it's okay, we're fine." But once we got to having to put our wheel back in, we'd almost flag them down, and there'd always be like 4 burly local guys push you out of the way. Yes, of course, we can push it back in for you. And so that was it. I mean, I do think it was never tested that if we had to get it back in, a combination of using a pulley and putting stones underneath, we would do it. It might take 45 minutes rather than 2 minutes, but I'm sure we would be able to do it. But things are bigger on a truck, so yeah.
Those kind of moments like that, how do you deal with those situations? Because for some people, just having a flat tire would be the end of the world for some people. In those situations, if you get a flat tire and you're miles away from anywhere, are you the calm, calculating type who's like pragmatic, we've got a problem here, we'll deal with it? Or do you freak out, do you get stressed, and what are the kids doing during this
Gilly's
situation?
the calm type. I go into like a very quick stress and then
with
relax.
usually lots of swearing and
then then it's like, okay, now we have to make a plan, and like then just sort of okay, if we were planning on getting somewhere in an hour's time, that's finished, and let's just work our way through the problem. And the kids almost like, whatever.
Nothing
Are we staying here
Nothing
tonight?
phases them.
Are we staying here tonight? No, they couldn't care less.
I think the only thing that fazed them in the whole trip was Indian driving.
Yes.
That was the only thing. They're not worried about anything else. They're pretty relaxed, and where they sit behind us in the truck, they can see everything because they're actually sitting above us and they see over our heads.
Right.
So they're really relaxed about anything that goes on. It doesn't seem to bother them at all. But Indian driving did get them like,
Right.
gosh, okay.
Partly that might have been, their language lessons weren't very good because they learnt a lot more swearing from their parents.
We're not really good up to that point.
In Indian driving.
Anybody who's driven in India will understand.
Yeah, our stress of driving, and a 10-ton truck in India is also, sometimes we took a wrong turn, we're in a bazaar, and it's like, how do you get me out of here? And so we obviously pretty anxious, and I think they've picked up on that anxiety.
Yeah.
And then it's not as if after you've had a highly anxious moment in India, you can go somewhere where it's all peaceful and quiet and relaxed.
No.
So there's no real ability to get it
never.
back down to
No.
the chilled level. So so I think that Alicia picked up on that a little bit. Our eldest, she picked up on that a little bit.
Yeah.
But the beauty of your vehicle choice, though, is, when you are in situations like that, when other people's driving is absolutely horrendous, you've got that security of the fact that you are in a 10-ton truck, and there were certainly times when we were in situations and I was just like, other people's driving is just so horrendous, and being elevated from the road lifts you into a zone of safety, and you.
Yeah, I think we didn't feel threatened ourselves because being such a big truck. The big trucks could cause. We worried just, of course, if we hit somebody, or particularly motorbikes and things, and because they just pull out in front of you, and we saw accidents, and that was.
We felt a big sense of responsibility. If we hurt someone else. That would be really a bad thing, especially since our size. It could be horrific. And we did get hit by a truck in Cambodia, and we were really pleased. I'm not going to say really pleased, but we hardly felt it. He hit us at speed from behind. Of course, we were overtaking a tractor. He thought we were just messing around and decided that he was going to overtake us overtaking.
We decided not to overtake the tractor because there was a car coming the other way, so I braked. He then said, well, if you're not going to overtake the tractor, I'll overtake you and the tractor. Of course, as he pulled out, then he realised, there's a good reason why they're not overtaking the tractor. The problem was I was now braking because of the tractor. He was accelerating, so when he pulled back in, he just went straight into the back. And we just felt like a little bump. But it completely smashed the whole of his cabin. Fortunately, the 3 people in there climbed out through the front window with a few scratches on.
But the whole front was completely caved in. The door came off. It was horrific. And all we got was a big nasty
crackle on the back of our cabin, camper.
And travelling with the kids like that, then, and from experience, certainly when we were driving through Russia, we witnessed quite a few car crashes and accidents, and you would see all manner of things in the road, and especially through India as well. You witness all manner of things in the street in India, from the bizarre to the just purely horrific, to be quite frank. How do you think the kids kind of took on those kind of experiences? Do you think they have a more liberal worldly view now, or do you think were there ever times when you saw stuff and you were like, oh, close your eyes to the kids, or were you happy just to let them see the world in its reality?
I think they see the world as its reality, but they take on a positive. I mean, they see the world as a very good place because their overwhelming experience has been fantastic.
Of course.
The response you get as foreigners in a small place, especially if the place is usually positive. Yes. People, as you know, hospitality around the world. They have anywhere else in the world apart from Northern Europe basically has a wonderful idea about hospitality and welcoming people in. So imagine, as overlanders, adults, you get that and times it by about 100 because you're travelling with kids. People are like, wow, really nice to see you, especially when you get to Asia, and Lucy's quite blonde and people were just like, whoa, this is amazing, big hugs and we just felt welcomed everywhere. And so I think they have a very positive view of the world and a positive view of how the people in the world react to them, and that most people are good.
They felt very, I think they always felt very secure. I think they felt secure if we were around, or if they were in the truck, and that gave them that real security. If they got tired or had enough of things, they say we want to go home, and they don't mean home as in where we used to live. Home was the truck, and it would mean that and they would almost go and sit on their bed and read a book or play Lego or do whatever they wanted to do. And that was there where they could just have their downtime away from it all. And so I don't think they did. I mean, the only thing I can think of, Varanasi, Alicia didn't like the dead bodies being carried through the streets and what have you. So, but she just, she said she didn't like it and she didn't want to see it, and that was fine. I mean, she was able to express herself and decide what she did and didn't.
But also, something good comes from that. Having that worldly experience and knowing those things go on is an important life lesson. There's nothing negative to be taken from that, really. But having spoken to the people we've encountered on our travels who've been travelling with kids, and again, a lot of French, like we mentioned earlier, those kids that we've met seem to be pretty grounded and have a really good understanding of the world. More, and that's never a bad thing. It's the best education you could possibly ever wish for a child, I think. That's my opinion, but and the benefits to spending that much time with your children, I think far outweigh any negatives that there might be. And to be honest, I think the negatives are so few and far between. It's a no-brainer, really. Now you've been back a couple of months, how do you think the kids are adjusting to not being on the road? Because like you said at the beginning,
better than us, I think.
Lucy spent more than half her life on the road almost.
So, they're just very adaptable. They're just. We were particularly worried about Alicia going into a school, and and how that would work out. She's loving it, and seems incredibly. I think that's one of the things about being overlanders. It's made them really, really adaptable. They kind of cope with anything, and be interested in the differences between. We're talking about Steve went to Pakistan. Well, while he was going to Pakistan, we ended up going to South Korea. Because weirdly,
as you do,
because that would end up because we couldn't go to China because we didn't have a long enough visa because we were going to go to China for a month afterwards. So we were kind of, where can we fly to from Delhi that's not horrendously expensive, and then get from there to Kashgar, and where could I spend the time? And so we went to Seoul, which complete polar opposite of India. And they were hilarious because we had this little apartment, and they spent the first 2 days glued to the window, looking at the traffic and going, can you believe it? There's, when the light goes red, the cars stop. And then they were looking at that difference, but then they were like, oh, but we love, Indian food and how that is, and look how, and because, they like to compare and contrast and not say one thing's better than the other, but just like, that's different, that's interesting. It's quite, what they pick up on as being a difference is often quite different than what you might see as an adult.
Yeah, so, I think it would really encourage an analytical mind. If you were, say, to look at an average family in their standard routine in England, the kids are seeing the same thing day in and day out, and so they don't ever question anything because it's the norm. Whereas if you're travelling in this way, you constantly have to question everything because there's so much bizarre stuff happening around you. So in that regard, I think the kids probably have garnered really analytical minds, which again, may shape their futures, really. To have those kind of analytical minds leads into creative thinking and all interesting. You're working your brain out every day, whereas if you're in a standard routine, I don't think you have the same challenges. So I think that's also a benefit. That's something I've not really thought about before.
No, and for them, normal is something different every day. And different circumstances. That is the normal. They're almost struggling here because the same thing happens every day.
But you also, having said that though, you do have a routine when you travel in this way, and you have constants. And like you said, the kids are referring to the vehicle as home.
Yeah, the truck is a constant, and it's a shame with us and our car, isn't it?
Yeah.
We need that. You have that. You know where everything is, and
So you do have a routine as much as the world is crazy around you. You are getting up at the same time every day. You're doing the schooling at the same time, and those constants are there, which I think is quite important. I should imagine taking kids backpacking, I could imagine, would be a whole different experience.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes when we were travelling, people would say, "Oh, would you like to stay somewhere? Stay at We're like, well, actually, we're happier in the truck.
We've said that before,
like in a hotel ground. Some countries where you have to stay in, a fixed place, and you're staying in hotel grounds. Like, wouldn't you prefer to sleep inside? Like, no, because we find it very, for us to pack the stuff and the kids to go into different beds and things like that. Yeah, it's far easier to do it in the truck.
I mean, when we travelled through Tibet, because you're meant to stay in hotels, we would constantly be negotiating with the guide. Could we stay in the car park? And we'll pay something to the hotel to use it. And most places we were able to do that. Well, we weren't able to do it in Lhasa. But then I remember in South Africa, we were in the Kalahari National Park, and we wanted, and it was very heavily booked. And so we'd gone online, we'd got a few campsites, but we wanted to go to one of the more northern ones, and there was nothing available apart from the chalet. It was the only thing available for one night, wasn't it? And I said, okay, we'll pay for it and we'll go so that we can drive the 50 miles up there and see a bit of a different topography and what have you. And we got there, and it was a pleasant enough. It had a bedroom with 3 beds in, I think, didn't it? And we'd smuggle Lucy in because I said, but this is only for 3 people. And we're like, come on, she's only 7. And the guy said, okay, fine. But we got there, and it had a kitchen and a shower and a bathroom, but it was freezing cold. It was like it was going to be -2 that night. Yeah. So what we did is we went and obviously used all the hot water in the shower. Had the showers, used the bathroom.
Cooked a really smelly curry, because that's one thing in the truck. So you usually cook inside.
We cooked a really good curry. And then it got to about, it was dark and it was getting cold, and it was like, so what are we going to do? We're going to get, we're all going to climb into bed and go to sleep. And we all went, no, let's just climb back into the truck. And so we actually, even though we paid for this thing, we actually then slept in the truck for the night, because it meant not having to go and get, the night clothes out. And the truck actually is warmer because our truck's really well insulated. It has its negatives when it gets hot. But at -2, it would probably be 16, 17 degrees inside the truck. And that's without putting the heating on.
Yeah. Comfortable temperature.
And that's, and you say with a duvet on, that's perfectly perfectly comfortable.
Yeah.
Whereas in this place, this chalet, it was probably about 5 degrees. So it was like easy answer. We'll just go back in the truck.
Yeah, I'm aware we've talked about the kids quite a lot, but from just the pushing the kids aside, where were your favourite places? Where were you having the most amazing experiences? I know it's impossible to answer those because we get asked the same questions.
It's the cliche question.
It's the cliche question.
If you ask Alicia that, she'll roll her eyes and
I mean, what we like is to be away from habitation in somewhere beautiful, ideally mountains, and to be really enjoying being out.
Us too, actually. That's where we...
Yeah.
So what we like to do is fill up the truck for this 10 days and go off. So bottom of South America, Patagonia is just beautiful, and to be able to sleep out in the wilds, in the Andes, really, really ticked all our boxes. And the same with the stands. I mean,
the stands are incredible.
Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, just beautiful. So we really enjoyed that.
Then Outback Australia, which we found again the remoteness and just the uniqueness of it. We really liked. The national parks in Africa. We spent a lot of time beforehand in Africa, and we love African wildlife and so that. And then we have to say it's not really overlanding, but we went to Antarctica, and that completely blew us away. Yeah. And even looking back now, it is right up there. We always say it was the number one, but then we say, oh, you can't say that because we didn't take the truck.
But hanging out in the bottom of South America is really handy because, it's beautiful in Terra del Fuego. You can spend happily a couple of months looking around and doing different things.
Okay, that's
so
a good
we
tip.
were able to look at, contact them and say, when have you got an Antarctic trip going that has a good deal, and 4 of us. And eventually we found one. I mean, the problem for us was there were quite a few ships that wouldn't take Lucy because she was only 6. But so eventually we found one, and it turned out to be one of the more adventurous ones. And, so we got a good deal with that. And so off we went for 10 days to Antarctica, and it was just amazing.
Yeah.
I am shocking on a boat. I vomit,
On
a lake, in a pond, in the bath. I really am. And the Drake Passage is obviously horrendous with the. And I think we've been in Antarctica 12 hours, actually in Antarctica. And I turned to Steve and said, "This is the best thing we've ever done. It's worth every penny of it, worth all that vomit, because it's just beautiful, and it's so unique, and you really feel that you're in somewhere really amazing. And it's not just the sights of it, the black water with the ice, but the sounds of all the glaciers creaking and cracking. And then, of course, there's the wildlife. You've got the penguins, you've got
so many whales,
birds." So it's just amazing. It really is. When we got back to the campsite where we left the truck, there was another overlanding couple there. We were asking the guy, "Well, where are they? I thought they were on an Antarctica trip." And he said, "Yeah, they did one Antarctica trip, got back, then they bumped into their friends who were going that afternoon, and they booked onto a second Antarctica trip straight off, and did a longer 19-day one." And fair enough, that was a hell of a lot of money, but we could understand, because we felt 10 days wasn't enough.
Yeah.
We could have easily gone for
I mean, it is. I mean, it's expensive. What you spend on an Antarctica trip, you could overland for months.
Right.
But I know when we were reading about them going down to South America, and other people that had done them, I mean, some, we're fortunate we could afford it, but other people, it was stretched. But there was a quote that someone said, "You'll never forget the trip, but you'll soon forget how much it costs," or the other way around. Because it just is so startling, and it is an opportunity, because you don't have the cost of the flight of getting down there. And although we got a good deal,
justifying it to yourself.
Yes, we got a good deal, but we didn't get a brilliant deal, because, as Gilly said, with having the children, it was much more restrictive. And so we went to the agent who does the last minute trips, and actually asked her to turn it around, and said, rather than sending us stuff that we go, "Yes, we'll take it," and her come back, "Oh, they won't take Lucy, or they won't take any of the children," we said, "Can you contact all the ships and do a list of which ones will take the children? When we've got the list, can you then contact them and see, do they have any last minute deals coming up, and then let us know, and we'll go." And she did that, but that meant we got a decent reduction, about a third off.
Right.
But people were getting 50% off.
Oh, okay.
And especially if you're prepared to do, often there's a triple cabin, like a triple male cabin, and you're happy, you say, "Look, I'll take, it's one berth," and you say, "Okay," and then, if you're a couple, you say, "Okay, we can live with being apart for 10 days to see Antarctica." Or you get,
or possibly welcome it. A year into a trip.
And it was so lovely after 18 months on the trip to have, the captain was driving the ship, not worried about where we're driving, having, meals prepared for you. Even even the orderliness of the sightseeing is, yes, at 9 o'clock you'll be getting in the inflatable and going on a tour around this bay, and then have it all organised for you, and then just having a drink in the bar in the evening and socialising with lots of different people.
And they have the most amazing scientists on board who do talks and stuff like that, and the talks are fantastic. And they, the polar explorers, they're naturalists. But you meet them in the bar afterwards or over a coffee.
They would hate me. I would have all the questions.
They love it.
And they love the kids asking questions, because they said it's so nice looking at Antarctica through the children's eyes.
Yes.
And because Gilly had done some teaching with them, they could talk to them about Scott's route and why Scott failed and Admundsen was successful in getting to the pole. They knew, and so they could engage with them, and they would actually spend ages with the kids, because they're in the 60s. They're like, "Oh, these are like my grandchildren." And so they had a great time with them, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, there was lots of giggling over penguin poo and various things in the corners, and I'm like, "Oh, where are the kids?" And they're finding with some eminent bearded scientists in the corner, the 5 of them giggling together and everything.
That's brilliant. We had some friends that went down that way, didn't we?
Yes.
And I'd spoken to interviewed a girl who was a motorcyclist.
Yes,
and she headed out that way, and I'm so incredibly jealous.
Definitely for the South America trip.
Yeah. And we might have to do some more saving.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But those kind of experiences that's going to stick with you forever. I remember the first time I ever went up a proper mountain with snow, and then stood at the top and just looked out, and that was just mind blowing to me. It was you can see a photograph.
You are from Guernsey.
Yeah. But to have that experience, it gives you a real sense of scale, and it really puts you in your place as to how small and minute you are, and it can be very humbling. Yeah, brilliant. Oh, I'm so jealous. So what's next? Do you have any other plans?
It's difficult to
Settling
say.
back into the UK, I suppose we are sort of saying the children will go through, English education if it's working out for them. Which, with Lucy only now being 9, that sort of leaves 9 years. What do we do? We always travelled a lot before.
Right.
We travelled around the world, went on very good sort of adventurous holidays. I mean, we did self-drive safaris in Africa and that sort of thing. At the moment, we're thinking one good thing. Alicia's getting about 7 weeks off next summer, so we think we're looking at going to Iceland and maybe Norway and taking the truck.
Oh,
So a mini overland trip, but somewhere different. I'm not sure we can do both, but we might either do Scandinavia or go and spend some time in Iceland. But after that, we really don't know. I think we'll be back to sort of holidays. I won't say it'll be 2 weeks flopping on the beach in the Mediterranean.
No,
but,
I shouldn't imagine.
Yeah.
For a
But
family.
either adventurous backpacking or going back and doing safari in Africa and things like that. We think, we're starting to think, what happens when the kids leave school, and would we go overlanding again, or would we travel in a different way where you maybe go and live in cities for 3 months and do an Airbnb type thing and a mixture, or would you take your own vehicle again, or would you even fly into a continent and get a vehicle and do it that way? We just don't know. It's a long way off.
What we've been warned as expats, and I think it's even more true for us, is that the re-entry process is going to be far more difficult than the actual starting something new, whether it's moving to a new country or starting an overland trip. So we really tried to keep that, and we were so busy as well in going through Asia. I mean, we didn't really have time to plan what we were doing. So we've taken that very much on board and sort of saying, we'll just see how things naturally progress and how what comes, because we lucky that we didn't sort of have to stress straight away about re-entry, and sort of take it a little bit easy and be kind to ourselves, because it is a huge change.
Massive.
I think as overlanders you acquire the knowledge that things have a way of working themselves out, whether it be a minute problem or a big problem. Ultimately things kind of work their ways out.
Anybody who's travelled in India develops a new level of patience and tolerance.
One final question, I think, and it's not one I've ever asked anyone before, and I'm a bit cautious about asking it because I don't want to end the podcast on any negatives, but do you have any regrets?
Having to come home, I think, is our biggest regret, because we were so happy on the road. I think we were tired and ready for a break, as I say, a few months off, maybe Christmas, and then go again. I mean, that's awful to say, but
because even though we were away 4 years, it was 4 years. That's a long time, but because we covered pretty much all 7 continents, I mean, we clearly didn't see everything, but it was still quite a pace. So I think we were ready just to chill somewhere. So whether that's coming back to England and seeing relatives for a few months, or just finding a lovely place to just relax for a few months. We're ready for a break, but I mean, I think regret coming back. Do we regret coming back? Possibly. And as I said, the only other regret we say is just not taking Gilly and the kids through Pakistan and doing the Karakoram Highway, which was just stunning. But not really. Are you ever regrets?
No, none at all. No,
we originally were going for 3 years. It was fixed 3 years because Alicia was going to start secondary school, a really natural time to come back. And I think we're 6 weeks into the trip and we're like, 3 years isn't going to be enough. And we sort of worked out and said, we were planning originally on going to Australia for like 3 months. When you imagine shipping the truck in just for 3 months into Australia, ridiculous.
Just from it takes that long to
clean
clean
it,
isn't it?
So we said, maybe we can make this 4 years. How important is first year at secondary school? Really?
Or the second.
Actually, I've just thought of other questions, and I'm terrible at this, but I don't want to finish on that question because it's too negative.
Oh, no regrets.
No
Not
regrets.
negative.
No regrets.
Regrets, yeah.
But just what do you think you've learned? Is there any one thing from this whole experience from the last 4 years that you've really learned that's potentially changed? I don't know what this question is. I didn't really think it through.
I think what I've found, and Gilly talks about it, it's reinforced. I mean, I think being an expat, we did already see the world slightly differently from certainly how it's presented on certain aspects of the media and TV. But I think it reinforced the feeling that most, 99 is just 99.9% of people in the world are nice and will help you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the world is not as scary as it's made out to be, and it's just so beautiful and wonderful out there. And I think learning that and accepting it and just seeing it for yourself is just an amazing and privileged thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think it reinforcing that there is a different view to what Fox News, Sky TV, the Daily Mail certainly present to you, and hopefully you can use some of the trip to try and offer that counterbalance to some of that.
Spread the message
of
the world.
Share that, and certainly with your children, with the girls.
And we hope they'll grow up with that broader mind, that global view.
Yeah, that they'll share with their friends.
And what you might perceive as scary when you're on the news, a group of people or whatever, and then you actually get there and you're chatting with them and you find out what they're interested in, exactly the same as things you're interested. They want a good quality of life for their family, they want the kids to be educated,
healthcare.
They want healthcare, they want basically what humans want is fundamentally the same throughout the world. The other bits are irrelevant, and I think that's taught us that basically humans are pretty much all good. There are the odd exception.
Most of them are in charge of the world.
That
1%.
We didn't learn politicians were good. We found that they weren't in many places. But so that's what we learned. I think.
Yeah,
cool. I think that's a good stopping point. I think that's a nice message to finish on. Perfect. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For me, it's a no-brainer. If you've got kids and want to undertake a hefty overland trip, just take them with you. The Snaith family are a great example of how it can work. Having spent some time with the kids, it's clear it's certainly not been to the detriment of their education. In fact, I would argue the opposite. They are smart, confident and polite kids who've got a real good grip on how the world works. We've recorded a bonus podcast just with the kids. You'll find that over on our website, theoverlandingpodcast.com. You'll also find all the previous episodes as well as links to all our social media channels and bonus material relating to each podcast. If you found this episode interesting, be sure to check out episode 11 with Kirsty for more family overlanding talk. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please let us know. You can also show your appreciation by subscribing and reviewing us on whatever platform you use. Writing us a review really does help boost our podcast up the listings, which in turn means these amazing stories will reach more people. If you're on the road with your entire family in tow and have an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at aroundtheworldin800days@mail.com. Please like, share, bump and give us a thumbs up along the way. Many thanks for joining us around the virtual campfire again. Please join us again soon. That's it for now. Adios.